When it comes to gaming, there are a few contenders for the greatest gaming franchise of all time. Pokemon, Call of Duty, Legend of Zelda, all of these are constantly scrutinized and looked over. Even I have spoken about these in both positive and negative lights. And while I believe that the greatest gaming franchise will always be up for debate, I wanted to talk about something that I feel is just as important as the rest but is often overlooked. Halo. It is nearly impossible for me to express the impact that Halo has had on my life, from introducing me to the FPS and sci-fi genres to one of its titles still holding its place as one of my top games of all time. Halo's impact on gaming runs incredibly deep, so I've taken it upon myself to get my hands on every single one that I can to see just how amazing they are. Or aren't. Halo Combat Evolved was one of the first games to release alongside the Xbox on November 15th of 2001. It was like nothing the world had ever seen before, bringing exceptional music and cinematography, AI that made the game difficult not because of poor controls or excessive damage, but because it actually reacted to the player's movements and actions, including 4-player split screen, and offered an incredibly smooth gaming experience. It was like nothing that had ever been released before in both tone and quality. And while it may not look like much now, its graphics and technology as a whole back in 2001 were groundbreaking. It is so incredibly obvious to see just how many aspects of modern gaming take from this. As the game starts, we see a ship called the Pillar of Autumn drifting through space towards a large mysterious ring. The captain of the ship is talking to an onboard AI about their escape from a place called Reach, and that they're being hunted by some group called the Covenant. The entire ship is put on high alert, preparing for the coming fight, and this is where they wake up the player character, Master Chief. Upon being woken up, the player is introduced to the controls, health, and how the shields work before the tutorial is interrupted by Captain Keyes ordering the Chief to come to the bridge immediately.
Okay, I'll leave the self-diagnostics running at least.
Good idea. You'd better get to your evac group, Sam.
Oh God, they're trying to get through the door! Security! Intruders and cryo tubes!
Sam! Sam! Come on, we've got to get the hell out of here.
Yes, the cutscene on the Halo CE anniversary is rough by modern standards, but this game does an incredible job of setting up the main enemy and how terrifying they are. Only having the ability to run away as members of the crew are killed around you is a massive wake-up call, and immediately puts you on your back foot. It's only once you meet the captain and are given a pistol that you finally are able to fight back. But even then, your mission is only to escape and save yourself. This is a fantastic opening to a game, not only showing you just how intimidating the enemy is, but also acting as a tutorial for the player and introducing one element at a time. For instance, right after you get the pistol, you need to eliminate a small group of enemies so you can get a grip on aiming and firing. You're given grenades and shown the perfect opportunity to use them. And finally, you're introduced to the flashlight and minimap while navigating through a collection of tight, dark corridors. What I find most important about this opening is that it implies and shows us just how dangerous the enemy is without strictly telling us. We're dropped into this world, introduced to a few characters, and then have to run for the exit as the ship is slowly overwhelmed by enemy forces. The first time I played this, the Covenant genuinely terrified me, and it was only once we were off the ship that I actually felt like I had a chance to fight these alien creatures. It's also worth noting that this game does an incredible job of introducing the game's controls in a way that feels natural, since Halo Combat Evolved was very much one of the first games to use both joysticks for both moving and shooting, and especially being the first game on a new console, there would have been so many people that weren't used to controlling a character like this. Moving on to the next mission, we're shown just how expansive this game can be, with a mission simply called Halo. Something I always loved about this mission in particular is how it feels like the game isn't holding your hand while still being able to show you exactly where you need to go, really giving you a sense of adventure even if I do get lost from time to time. The amazing thing about this mission is that it's still an amazing example of what put this game on the map. Massive open areas with somewhat dynamic fights that really make you feel like you were part of the action, followed closely by tight, tense corridors where you need to think on your feet just to survive. Even though this is a fairly simple game design philosophy, it still feels like it's up to the modern standards of level design. Sadly, that's not something I can say for every level in this game. Pushing on to missions like Truth and Reconciliation, we're introduced to Halo's slower missions, where you push through a section of the map filled with enemies that are either asleep or patrolling unaware of your presence. And this part is still quite fun. It isn't until we reach the Covenant ship that things start to go a little downhill. I have played this game countless times, but even I still get lost in the samey corridors of the Truth and Reconciliation. This mission goes on for a massive stretch of time, and even though overall it's still pretty cool, I still feel drained by the end of it. Skipping ahead a little bit, we'll move on to Well Enough Alone. It is incredible how quickly this game gets you on edge. Everything you had known up until this point is gone. Cortana was left behind on the last mission, and the entire map is dark, with the Covenant seemingly more interested in fleeing from something other than you. Your minimap is showing strange signals from allies that don't exist, and there's creatures running around in the distance that look completely new. And for once, there aren't any elites to greet you. But it doesn't end here. Moving into the nearby complex, there are bodies everywhere, both Covenant and human. The Covenant seem to have set up fortifications that have been completely destroyed or abandoned. There's no music to accompany you, and there's a strange substance dripping from the roof at some points. Once you get into the final room, you're shown just what happened to the Marines that you've been trying to find through a recording. And then, you're almost forced to do what you did on the Pillar of Autumn, and run for your life as more and more twisted forms of both enemies and allies appear from the countless rooms that were locked earlier. Sadly though, in my eyes this is where the rest of the game kind of falls off. It's far from one of the weakest games in the series, we'll get to that later, but this game does have a lot of issues. It's pretty well documented at this point that Halo Combat Evolved had a pretty rushed development cycle, and that is very evident towards the end, when we start seeing a lot of the game's features either being repeated or running through levels in reverse. That being said, I do enjoy the way the game mirrors itself and how well it reuses what it could. 2 Betrayals and Keys being excellent examples of this, even if the latter still has its issues with pacing and encounters. Halo Combat Evolved is incredibly simple, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. While the layout of some levels can be pretty confusing, it's all structured in a way that makes it incredibly user-friendly, giving you all of the tools you may need or want, and then giving you the perfect examples of where to use them. Yes, it's not completely mind-blowing, but it shows you exactly why this was noted as one of the greatest shooters of its time.